There's a little mock-up fit before we go to the press of our new plug. This is the one I have to kind of tap it to get it all the way down in there. And then of course our broach plug right there. And unfortunately it starts down in there. I like it whenever it goes down and actually touches on the very first tooth. So I got the depth of it. I got the depth of it wrong, but it's not a big deal. You can still go ahead and push that through there and cut it. In cases where this cutter goes down in there a little bit, sometimes you have to add an extra shim to the cut to make up for that that clearance that it didn't cut in there. All right, so these are the shims. I've just got a handful, and it doesn't matter what fractional size is stamped on this. They're all the same thing. So we'll probably be using either 3 or 4 shims in this. An easy way to remember that is if you look at the letter, this is D, it's A, B, C, and D. The cutter counts as one pass, and then so A, B, C, D. That's just one way to remember that. Sometimes you have to add another shim though, just depending on the job. So anyway, let's go ahead and go down to the press. I'll give you a little quick shot of the Kentmore electric press and talk about that because that's what we're going to use. And then after that, we'll start broaching our key. So this is my press that we're going to use to do the broaching. This machine is the press that I have used for countless broaching operations since my career started in 1997. This originally belonged to my dad at our old shop, Booth Machine Shop. And back in 2013, whenever we were closing the old shop, downsizing, and whenever I was moving everything here, I was working at Motion. I had started at Motion in '09. They ended up buying this from my dad. And you know, at that time when we started downsizing and moving stuff here, it wasn't really a big plan to have a full-blown shop here. It was going to be like one lathe, a mill, and I wanted to keep this press. This is my Dake press right here, 50 ton, and so I kept that. But this right here is such a handy press to use for broaching keyways that I talked to Motion about buying it from my dad, which they did. They worked out a deal and they bought it from my dad, and I used it at Motion for many years there, doing the same thing, just broaching keyways. But I had eventually talked them into buying a new Dake press, which is what they did. And so whenever we had gotten the new press there at Motion, the new Dake press, I ended up buying this back from Motion and bringing it home. So it's considered a crankshaft press. That's what my dad always called it, was a crankshaft press, made by Kentmore out of Detroit. And whenever we had got it at Motion, that's when we put this paint job on it. Before that it was green, just like that right there. So it looks pretty good with the paint job. But anyway, whenever my dad got it, it was fully a manual operation. So he's the one that mounted this, I believe it's a 2 horsepower 3-phase motor. All right, so he made up this base plate up there, welded it all on there. He got some pulleys and mounted it up there, and he made it so that you don't have to manually crank that. On the back of it here, this hand wheel right there used to have a handle that stuck out of it so that you could actually just hand crank it. Okay, so he made it automated with the electric motor, added a forward and reverse switch right here. This is actually a new one that I put on there after I purchased the press back from Motion. This is actually the old one right here. And the main thing that happened was the handle had finally broke after all those years of using it. All right, so we put this on there, and all this does is reverse the polarity. It just changes the polarity of 2 of the wires, so it just changes the direction of the motor. So we'll go ahead and operate it. Left is forward, to the right side is reverse, and it's an instantaneous switch. So going down, you need to go back, reverse it. All right, it is quite noisy and clanky. I use my my earplugs whenever I operate this, because as you're standing here operating, it does get pretty loud. There was a the guys at work fabricated a little tin guard to go over this bevel gear right here, but I didn't like the way it sounded and the way it looked. It just looked cobbled together. There's part of it on the back. I just left that one there. So this is how it was designed, you know, before all the guarding requirements from OSHA. But all it does is just operate a set of bevel gears in here. So you got a pinion gear, bevel gear, which turns this square thread shaft up and down, and you have a pretty good range. You can see how far up it goes there. So perfect for broaching. I know that this will go up to a 1-inch broach. After that, there's too much pressure, and at that point what it does is the belt starts slipping on there. All right, and I've never had a reason to try to change that to like a chain drive or something. So it allows it to have a little bit of give, because I don't know how much pressure this thing can handle. So I'll have to adjust the table. We'll get it set where we need, put our parts in here, and we will start broaching away. I think we should be ready to broach this key. So made up this little push rod right here. Once we get the cutter down here to the plug, you got to have a rod that'll fit down in there. It's always best to take these, face the ends off, put a chamfer there so that they help line up that slot right there. So go ahead and we'll get it all the way down through there. Just get it centered up on the push rod there. I think that's going to be flat enough, and it looks level enough. It's a casted piece, but I think it's going to be level enough. Hey, one thing I forgot, I always like putting a box down there underneath it to catch all the chips and the cutter whenever it falls through there. So let me do that first. Just start with this box here. This will be good to catch the chips anyway. And like what I used to do when it was in motion, I had blocks stacked up right here. That way it would back up the bottom of the box there. But I'm probably just gonna put my hand on the cutter. Once the cutter gets down here, I always put my hand on it. That way when it falls, I can just, you know, I'm holding it and I just pull it out. But this right here just helps collect the chips. I just hold it on the bottom with my fingers to keep it center until it pushes on it. All right. Now this is where I put my left hand down here just to hold the cutter so that when it falls through the slide, I catch it. Right there. All right, see it fell? You can grab the push rod here, or not. Sometimes you got to move this out of the way, so just drop it down. There we go. There's our very first pass. It did good. I think I'm gonna put a little bit of lube just on the cutter, just to help it slide through the steel broach plug. We don't need lubrication where it's cutting there, just because we're cutting bronze. Just put a little bit of this. This is the shaper oil right here. I'm just going to put a little bit in there and on this just to kind of lube it up a bit. Doesn't take much. All right, that's where we'll start adding the shims. So I just grab one right here, and I usually hold it down in there and just kind of hold it up just a touch with my finger so it doesn't fall out. And then we'll stick our cutter in there and push it down. And you see, that's how it's supposed to engage the very first time. Come down to that first tooth right there. All right. So now we'll go ahead and come down and keep on pressing. All right, what I did right there is once the cutter starts pushing and engaging, a lot of times this will be slightly crooked a little bit as it goes down in there. So all I do is I just back off, just reverse the motor. That way the cutter can center itself up and release that tension there, and then come back down and keep pressing it. Alright, going in with our second shim, so just stack it right on top of the first one right there. Repeat the same thing, just drop it down in there and just hold it so it doesn't fall through on you. Usually clear the chips out of the broach cutter. Yeah, it's a little tight. This is where I'm talking about letting it center up. Now it's engaging the first tooth. I'm going to back off. We'll see if it springs any. Not much. But I can also see I'm kind of moving forward on the ram there, so I'm going to push it back towards the center, right there. Keep on going with it. Put my finger there, my hand there, just to hold it. For whatever reason, if that thing tries to pop out, you know, I don't want it hitting me in the face. So I just kind of put my hand around it just to protect myself if it does bend and pop out of there. We're going to go in with our third shim now. After we do this third shim, we'll go ahead and pull the plug out and we'll measure the depth there on where we need to be. Standard should be 7/32. Oh, they didn't go up enough. Let's see if we can get this plug out of there. It's going to be a little tricky. I have to push it from the bottom. Yep. All right. Let me move my stuff out of the way so I don't fall. so it doesn't fall. Let's look at our key. Here's you a shot of what it's looking like. Looks good. I see a void down inside there in the casting, but shouldn't be any kind of problem there. So let's go ahead and measure the depth. Find my 30 seconds right there. Easier for go over on this side right there. So it looks like we hey, come on in. Looks like we're there. It's right at a 1/4 inch depth right now, and what we need is 7/30 seconds. So here's his key, and you can tell that he was actually, these have already been used. You can see the line right there where it was engaging the part, whatever this originally was for. And if we stick that in there, we can see that it actually lines up with it great. So that should work. We're going to leave it right where it's at because it's slightly over 7/30 seconds depth, and we're good to go. So this one's done. All we got to do is just we got to file the inside and get rid of that burr there. But we'll move this out of the way and we'll start on the second one. All right, time to get the second one done here. I think I'm going to go ahead and line it up on this thicker section right there. So let me get this out of the way. Like that. All right. This area of the bore was actually really loose, really oversized. So it made that cutter go down there even further than the first one. We may end up having to use an extra shim on this one right here. I'm not sure yet. Got lubed up. obviously we're trying to get a little bit of video to share, and Abby's out here helping me with that. Normally, you know, when you're doing this every day and you're doing it on the time, you know, you're pretty efficient and you start getting used to the motions and everything that you're doing. And I can't tell you how many times I've done this since 97, just constantly push it through, add a shim, push it through on multiple jobs. We used to do a lot of machine work for Motion Industries, even before like I started working there. All the couplings and hubs that they would sell, a lot of times they would sell them and they would need to be bored to size and then broach a keyway in there and put a set screw, and that was one of the things that Dad and I did all the time for Motion. Film. Let's go ahead and measure it. That should have been our last pass. Let's see if we can get the plug over there. We want 30 seconds there. So it looks good. We're past the 7:30 seconds mark right there.
It's kind of hard to tell.
Yeah, it won't focus in that close, babe. You have to back up some. No, I think we're good right there. Let me grab the key. This one right here had the mark on it. Yeah, you can kind of see it lined up with that line from where it was originally used. So we're good to go. If for whatever reason Doug puts these in there and it won't clear the key, you can easily take and just kind of grind a little bit off the top of these keys right here, or mill them, whatever, just to provide clearance. But there should already be adequate clearance between the capstan and the key itself. So these are pretty much done. All I gotta do, I'll get a half round file and go in there and deburr that sharp edge where that cutter, you know, rolled it over into the bore, and then we'll be done. All right, we just about got Doug's capstans ready to go. We just got our keys broached in there, got to do some deburring, and these things are done. They are just about ready to be on the SV Seeker and sail around the world. All right, guys, well, this job is finished up. It was actually a very simple operation to get done, and I really enjoyed being able to make this plug and share it with you on the channel. I haven't made one of these in a while, but this is something else that we did often in the shop. You would get a part in that had sort of a funky size bore, and you don't have a plug already made up, so you just got to make one, make it fit the cutter, and get the job done. So this thing is done, and I was real happy to be able to collaborate with Doug over at SV Seeker on this. You know, he dropped these off with me last November, but he wasn't in any kind of big hurry on it. He even joked, said that he would pick them up whenever he sailed down to the Gulf, and he would stop here in Pensacola and pick these things up. But the plan is that we are taking a trip, and on the way out there, we're going to be stopping at Doug's up in Oklahoma and visiting with Doug and dropping these things off for him, and be able to take the camera and show that sailing vessel that he has been building from the ground up for like the past, I don't know, 6-7 years, I believe is how long he's been working on that. And so this is my little contribution to the build there for the SV Seeker. There's been a lot of people that's volunteered their time to come and help Doug work on the boat and get it built. And I know that he's getting pretty close to the end. I don't know how far away he's got, but he's making a lot of progress on it here lately, and it looks like, when you look at it, it looks like a complete boat. So I'm real excited to finally see that boat in person. Got the camera there, and we'll take it and we'll do a little tour of the SV Seeker in person for the A-Bomb 79 channel here. So that's going to be it. Hopefully you enjoyed watching this project, and be on the lookout for the video of Doug and I hanging out together with Abby, of course, up there at the in the SV Seeker. All right. See you guys later.